Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Meeting Replay, a series where I break down how modern financial advisors are actually using AI inside real conversations, prospects, and clients. This isn't theory or best practices. These are real workflows, real meetings, and what's actually changing because of AI. And today we're stepping into a prospect conversation, specifically with a woman breadwinner navigating an important financial decision and exploring what happened before, during, and after that meeting ended. We're going to unpack the conversation. We're going to talk about what stood out during the meeting and specifically take it back to how AI has helped create momentum around the entire process, from the discovery call to what happened after. And joining me today is Matthew Koppelman, CFP and co-founder of Precision Wealth Planners. Matthew works closely with women breadwinners. He helps them navigate complex financial decisions, retirement, pension options, stock compensation, long-term financial security. And personally, I've worked and collaborated with Matthew on a few different projects, and I can say he is known for his thoughtful, relationship-driven approach to advice, which I think makes him an amazing guest for today's conversation. So Matthew, thank you for giving me that moment. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Diana. I appreciate it. That's quite the intro. Thank you.
You're so welcome. It's my job to properly introduce you to our show today. You're so gracious to give us your time. Let our guests know where you're dialing in from today.
Yeah, so we have two offices. They're both just outside of DC. My wife and I live in DC, but I'm in Bethesda, Maryland, and my partner runs our satellite office in Annapolis, Maryland, so not too far down the road.
Love it. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I always like to just geotag. It helps with anyone that's tuning in to relate. Maybe they're in your area. Maybe they want to meet you up for a coffee afterwards. I'm in Tampa, Florida. If any of you are listening right now and you're in Tampa, please let me know. Let's meet up for a coffee. But okay, we're going to jump into the actual meeting replay. This is the fun part. So tell me about the meeting. Matt, can you take us into this meeting that we're going to unpack today? Maybe give our audience a little background on who this prospect is, this female or women breadwinner. And when they came to you, what were they hoping to solve?
Sure. So I got introduced to the prospect through a referral, which is always, obviously, that's the ideal way to meet a potential client, right? And the referral came from one of our top clients. So I initially went into the meeting kind of thinking like, okay, like this is not a done deal, but really I just need to explain a little bit about who I am and what the process is and things like that. I found out pretty quickly that while she was very well prepared for retirement and she seemed to be on board with all of my high level recommendations, that I could just tell that there was something holding her back, and she seemed a little bit uncomfortable about what potential next steps would be. She had been with her employer for like 35 years. So I think a lot of that had to do with any upcoming changes that there might be. But that's a little bit on background on who the prospect was.
Okay. And so thank you for sharing that. And so as this prospect is sitting down with you and you're feeling this sort of blockage, right? As the meeting unfolded, what was memorable? Like, was there a moment, a concern, or an opportunity that eventually came out and changed the direction of the discussion for you guys?
I think what was memorable came more like after the meeting, just because, again, like when we were in the initial meeting, my initial meetings are like 30 minutes. It's more of a meet and greet to see like, hey, is there a good fit here? Yeah. Or should I maybe refer this business out to another advisor? So we went through the initial meet and greet, and I left that meeting thinking like, okay, like that one, I'd give that like a B+. It was a good meeting, but it wasn't a great meeting. And then what changed for me was after the meeting, kind of tying into our theme for today, is like I was able to go back and rewatch the meeting that I just had. And I noticed some like nonverbal cues and like times where like she kind of grimaced a little bit on her face, and she seemed uncomfortable when I started mentioning like, oh, like one thing we could think about is X or Y. And so I was able to go through and take notes looking at almost like the way an athlete would, like looking at my own tape, right? And then go back, take notes, and then during the follow-up conversation, I was able to go through and address all of the things that came up there.
That's such a powerful use of simply just having a recording, right? And
Yeah.
I liked what you said. This is sort of like being an athlete, right? You've got to look at the replay, which is really a lot of what I want to do in this series as well, is like you have to look back. And so you took the recording, you listened to the recording. I'm assuming this recording came out of the Jump platform, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I went back and watched the full recording from the Jump notes, and then went back with the transcript.
And that's where you really found that blockage, right? Where you got to uncover, based on the video, based on whatever came out of that recording, okay, there's something bigger here, and here's how I should maybe adapt my approach. Can we talk about that a little bit? Like, how did you go from, I looked at this recording, I have some new insights now, and I want to use the recording and whatever other AI that you're using in your business, whether it's Jump or other tools, to like keep the momentum moving forward?
Yeah, I think every client's different. With her, I was really transparent. I just told her, I was like, hey, and this was during our second meeting, I was like, after our first meeting, I went back and I was like, I'm sure you noticed that I had a note taker that was in the meeting. And she was like, yeah, everybody has those these days, yada, yada, yada. So I
They're
told
used
her,
to it now, right?
yeah, I told her, I was like, I went back and I watched the meeting again along with the transcript, and I could tell, like, you're nodding your head along the whole time, like everything makes sense and you're on board with what I'm recommending, but I could also tell that you're like a little bit uncomfortable with any potential change. Can you tell me there's something that I'm missing, like what am I missing here? And she was like, oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. And then she ended up telling me like how she grew up, and she is like the first person in her family to go to college, and a lot of people in her family depend on her financially, even though like she's not married, she doesn't have any kids, but like brothers and nieces and nephews and stuff like that. So I like uncovered this whole, like you said, called it a blockage that I wouldn't have even known was there before, especially like maybe 2 years ago, before I was using all of this stuff. And I just would have had my head down, like jotting down notes of like, when's her birthday, how much she has in various accounts, like when does she want to turn on Social Security, like all of these different things. It just would have been my head down, like jotting down notes rather than being present in the meeting. So that was pretty awesome to uncover all that. And then we had a whole conversation about like how I grew up, and it really took the meeting to the next level. And like the trust went from, and this is like in the second meeting, the trust went from here to like way up here, just after like an hour and a half total Zoom. So yeah, that was the big changing point, I think.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how, most of us think of AI as like an addition of, robotics, if you will, into our process. But really what it is allowing you to do is actually be more present, so you can uncover more of the human interaction that's happening in a meeting versus having your head down and writing a note. And then, you would have missed all of that had it not been for a note taker. And, it seems simple to say note taker, but like a tool like Jump, right? It's beyond a note taker, right? The note taking is kind of the first step. And it's certainly the bread and butter of the value there, but there's so much more beyond that. I'm curious, like if there was anything else, outside of the note taking capability that maybe supported this. Did you use any, signals, or were there anything else, any insights that kind of surface inside of your AI tools that helped you support this conversation? And I'm also curious, did she become a client?
Yeah, she did. I guess we kind of buried the lead. Yeah, she did. She did become a client. She's a current client.
Yeah.
And like I used the analytics after the first meeting too. I noticed, you and I were joking around about this beforehand, but like sometimes when I get going, like I have the tendency to talk a lot during the Zoom. So I looked at my talk time versus hers at the beginning, and it was Like I like for the client to talk, or the potential client to talk more than I do in the meetings. And that wasn't the case in the first Zoom. So that's, again, like in the second one, when I came back, I'm like, tell me more about this. And that just really opened up the whole, and let her talk and me just listen.
Yeah, I think being able to track talk time ratio is super helpful for advisors. I mean, it brings that self-awareness that maybe you didn't really have before. In your favor, I'll say that an initial discovery call, it's pretty normal for advisors to talk, more than 75% of the time. I think our insights at Jump say, like, once you get past 85%, then you're really in like the red zone.
Yeah.
And not in a good way, right? And so like you want to try to keep it below that. But that second conversation is really where you can also have, it opens up naturally more to have your clients speak more, your prospects speak more. So to your favor, like that's kind of, it's kind of average. But I like how this was, you went from these insights to, okay, well, I'm going to change my approach in that next meeting with her. And I'm going to, this is what we're going to focus on. And it just opened up like the whole door, right? And I just think that is so fascinating, and just another wonderful use case of AI actually making you be better in your business, but be a better human as well, and listen better, and just balance talk time. And those are things that are so important and often overlooked in our industry. So thank you for sharing that. I think if we zoom out, I have just maybe one other question. There's so many different areas where I think AI has made an impact here, has helped you as the advisor, is only going to help this person now as a client, right? Moving forward, this is just the beginning, right? You'll continue to use AI. I know there's a lot of advisors out there who aren't really doing any of this yet, or maybe they're considering the note taker, but they still feel uncomfortable. You said something earlier. She kind of already like anticipated because everyone else is using note takers. Would you give them any advice to get started, to get going with using AI in their business?
Yeah, I would just take a hard look at like how much time you're spending on tasks that aren't necessarily worth your time. For me too, like I'm not running some like 5, 10, $15 billion practice. Like I don't have a huge staff. So to be able to outsource this to different pieces of software is big for me, because this allowed me to, rather than hire a whole new assistant, pay them benefits, all of those different things. Like I've been able to just use this software. And it's also integrated perfectly with like the rest of my team. So when I got off that second meeting, I could send a note to my assistant and say, hey, the prospect, I'm not going to say her name, but let's say her name's Jane. Jane mentioned that she's a big fan of the Beatles. Send her a Beatles coffee mug before our next meeting. And I don't even have to call my assistant. It just shows up in the CRM. It just, I don't know, it saves me a lot of time. And it lets me focus on like the stuff that I want to do too. Yeah. I don't want to be like doing all of the nitty gritty admin stuff. I want to just be talking to people and helping them with their plans.
And that's exactly what this is enabling you to do. So if that's not good enough advice to move an advisor to start using AI more in their processes, I don't know what is. And this isn't the first time I've heard it, right? I've heard and spoken with so many financial advisors in the last just 12 months alone. And it's certainly evolved a lot in the last 12 months, but especially in the last 12 months. And just hearing the impact and like, hey, this is helping me here, or making me better here, or sharpening my skills here. It's fantastic. And I am so excited about where this industry is headed. And thank you, especially Matthew, for coming on and sharing your experience, actually breaking down a real prospect meeting. Congratulations on winning the client, of course. And for our audience, if you're still tuned in and you'd like to learn more about Jump's AI-powered operating system to help you grow AUM, save tons of time, scale your business, and deepen client relationships, there's a QR code right here at the bottom of the screen. You can scan it to start your free 14-day trial of Jump. I highly encourage it, and we'll see you on the next episode.